Usually when quarterbacks meet in midfield, it's all smiles and handshakes. Good game, stay healthy, see you next time. That's the script, right? But yesterday, Aaron Rodgers clearly decided he wasn't reading from it anymore. He didn't just tip his cap to Shedeur Sanders. He detonated a verbal grenade aimed straight at the Cleveland Browns organization. When reporters asked about Shedeur's outing, Rodgers stared into the lens and basically said, "I'm done protecting feelings. What they're doing to that kid is criminal." And here's where it gets wild. The mainstream outlets suddenly went quiet, almost like they were scared to air the full moment because it shines a brutal light on the NFL's decision-making. The broadcast cut off right after that statement. Convenient timing, right? But don't worry, we tracked down the unfiltered audio. Make sure you subscribe and hit that bell right now, because this platform is already trying to label this as anti-NFL content. Miss that button and you might miss what Rodgers truly thinks about Kevin Stefanski. Go ahead, tap it. Let's hear how a future Hall of Famer really talks when he's not playing PR games. And trust me, the quote that reportedly has Jimmy Haslam reaching for the league office phone this morning, it's explosive. What Aaron Rodgers just pulled off has the entire NFL world buzzing. And honestly, it's overdue. We're used to the four-time MVP playing mind games with reporters or tossing out cryptic one-liners. But his comments about Shedeur Sanders weren't sarcasm, and they weren't surface-level compliments either. This was a sharp, deliberate message that flips the entire storyline around the rookie. Rodgers stepped to that podium and didn't just praise Shedeur. He echoed everything the Sanders family has been preaching for years. Then he pushed it even further. He appeared to validate one of the loudest draft night conspiracy theories floating around the league. When a quarterback with 2 decades of scars and wisdom starts referencing coordinated decisions and specific film from Jackson State Tigers football, you know this isn't small talk. This is bigger than X's and O's. This is about credibility, power, and perception. And what Rodgers revealed may completely reshape how insiders truly evaluate Shedeur. To grasp why this moment hits so hard, you have to consider who's speaking. Aaron Rodgers isn't some retired analyst with spare time. He's one of the most locked-in competitors in professional sports. His legacy is still being written. His offense still needs mastering, and his weekly film study doesn't pause for distractions. He's not supposed to be watching random college broadcasts, or at least that's what everyone assumed. But Rodgers admitted he wasn't just catching Shedeur's highlight reels. He's been tracking his development from day one. He specifically referenced following the journey from Jackson State Tigers football to Colorado and eventually into the NFL spotlight. Let that sink in for a second. While major outlets were questioning the legitimacy of HBCU competition, one of the sharpest football minds alive was tuning in closely. He didn't care about conference logos or helmet decals. He evaluated the raw ability. Rodgers even confessed he was quietly rooting for Shedeur, and that kind of personal endorsement from a rival quarterback, that's rare. It signals that the skill was obvious to those who genuinely understand the game, even when draft boards suggested otherwise. But he wasn't finished. The interview shifted, and suddenly the tone changed. The NFL draft came up. You already know where this is going. We all watched Shedeur's puzzling slide to the 5th round, a drop that defied logic considering his production and poise. The host addressed it head-on, suggesting the fall may have been strategically engineered. Most players would dodge that grenade. They'd hide behind the usual "that's just how the draft works" line. Rodgers didn't. Instead of brushing it aside, he leaned straight into the uncomfortable truth. He admitted that Shedeur Sanders waited far longer than anyone expected, and by refusing to dismiss the idea that something felt orchestrated, instead acknowledging the sting of that draft slide, Aaron Rodgers subtly signaled that politics may have shaped Shedeur's draft day ordeal. That alone sparks a serious question. If a future Hall of Famer can recognize that the process looked off, why is the media still selling it as business as usual? Rodgers' tone suggests he understands how decisions are really made behind closed doors. He recognizes elite talent instantly, and he also recognizes when that talent gets buried for reasons that have nothing to do with performance. There's also a deeper psychological layer to why Rodgers relates to Shedeur, and it traces back to the infamous 2005 NFL Draft. Rodgers knows the humiliation of sitting in that green room, camera in your face, forcing confidence while franchise after franchise passes you over. He dropped all the way to pick 24 when many believed he should have gone first overall. For years, he's talked about the chip that moment placed on his shoulder, the kind of chip that turns doubt into dominance. So when Rodgers addressed Shedeur's fall, he wasn't just analyzing, he was feeling it. He even suggested Shedeur's weight might have been more painful than his own. Rodgers sees flashes of his younger self in him, talented, cerebral, and underestimated by the establishment. That shared experience builds a connection that no quarterback coach can manufacture. Rodgers understands that draft day embarrassment can become rocket fuel. By saying this out loud, he's essentially sending a warning shot to the league. You let this one slip, just like you did in 2005. And we all remember how that story ended for the teams that passed on Rodgers. But this is what might be the most revealing piece of all, what Aaron Rodgers didn't say. Rodgers is known for being brutally exacting. He might be the most detail-obsessed quarterback of his generation. If mechanics are sloppy, he'll say it. If reads are late, he'll call it out. Yet during his entire assessment of Shedeur Sanders, there wasn't a hint of criticism. No, he needs to adjust to the pro speed. No, he hangs on to the ball too long. No coded warning about attitude. That silence speaks volumes. From a mind like Rodgers, the absence of criticism is thunderous approval. He highlighted Shedeur's patience and emphasized the work he's put in behind the scenes. And you can't fake that in front of someone like Rodgers. He can see it in your footwork, your pocket movement, your release timing, whether you've been grinding or coasting. Rodgers made it clear, Shedeur is putting in the labor. At a time when certain narratives try to frame him as privileged and handed everything, Rodgers just dismantled that storyline. He confirmed that Shedeur is investing in the unseen hours greatness requires, and that validation punches holes in the lazy takes that have followed the Sanders name for years. When Rodgers says a quarterback is playing pretty good, it may sound understated, but you have to understand his language. He doesn't exaggerate. So for him to evaluate the chaos in Cleveland, whether with the Cleveland Browns or wherever Shedeur is battling behind inconsistent protection, and still say he's performing well, that's significant. Rodgers studies context obsessively. He knows quarterbacks depend on protection and separation. He sees Shedeur scrambling, absorbing hits, popping back up, and still firing darts. He's grading on difficulty level. And when a rookie flashes composure inside dysfunction, that's a franchise signal. Rodgers is urging people to ignore surface stats and examine traits, resilience, precision under pressure, mental processing while 300-pound defenders close in. That's what he's applauding. This conversation drew a clear divide. On one side, media voices, including figures like Jason Lloyd, accused of cherry-picking numbers to frame Shedeur as struggling. They chase outrage. On the other stands Rodgers, Super Bowl champion, four-time MVP, a quarterback who has decoded defenses for 2 decades. So who carries more weight? The columnist hunting clicks, or the future Hall of Famer who says he studied the tape for 3 years? Rodgers didn't need to name critics directly. By stating that anyone who truly followed the journey knows the talent is authentic, he quietly dismantled the opposition. He basically put the spotlight on analysts who skim headlines instead of studying film. Aaron Rodgers is restoring the credibility that Shedeur Sanders hasn't been given, making it clear that real football minds inside facilities see something totally different than critics firing off tweets. And there's almost a cinematic twist to this whole thing involving Deion Sanders. Rodgers reflected on lining up against Prime back in 2005. He even brought up a Monday night matchup where the Packers were getting handled and shared a quick on-field exchange with Deion. With a grin, Rodgers said he takes pride in never throwing a pick in Deion's direction. That detail isn't random. It proves Rodgers has long respected the Sanders name. He watched the father electrify the league. Now he's observing the son fight to build his own chapter. It feels like a generational relay, not just from Deion to Shedeur, but from one era of elite quarterback standards to another. Rodgers sees the Sanders blueprint, the confidence, the charisma, and most importantly, the production to justify it. By standing behind Shedeur publicly, Rodgers is quietly paying homage to that lineage. He's quietly telling the NFL fraternity, this one belongs. And in a league that can be ruthless towards high-profile newcomers, having endorsement from a figure like Rodgers is protection you can't purchase. So what's the bigger takeaway for the league? Simple. The storyline is shifting. For months, piling on Shedeur became fashionable. Jokes about his draft fall, doubts about his ceiling, people almost rooting for the stumble. But when Aaron Rodgers calmly steps to a mic and dismantles that noise piece by piece, the temperature changes instantly. That's not hype, that's weight. Aaron Rodgers just delivered the ultimate cosign. He acknowledged the adversity, affirmed the ability, and subtly questioned how fairly he's been treated. And trust me, when someone with that resume speaks, locker